Hello, dear forum members. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to people all over the world. Me and Angus McEwan are here for a live interview. He's an internationally renowned, famous watercolor artist. Plus, he is also very good with oil paints. He used to teach in a university, and now he is also having his online programs that can help artists all over the world to learn watercolors. Hello, Angus. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Mita. Thanks for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's overdue, as you say.
Yes, definitely. I wanted to know a lot about you, and this is such a fabulous opportunity for me. Can you tell us about your journey as a watercolor artist? How did you get started, and what pivotal moments shaped your career?
Well, I've wanted to be an artist since I was about 5 years old. So right through school, everything was geared towards getting to art school. When I was about 16, 17, I lived in Canada for a while, and I came home to Scotland and I didn't get into art school. So I applied to another college to do graphics for 2 years. So I did graphic painting for 2 years, which involved me using, at that time it was Letraset, and you were using gouache painting. There was no computers or anything like that. It was everything was done by hand. At the end of that course, I applied to art school and I got into art school, and the idea was to go and do illustration. And I tried that in part of my kind of first year. I was exploring lots of different things, and I really enjoyed painting, and I didn't enjoy the illustration so much. So I decided to do painting and applied for that course, got in, did that. Did that for 4 years. So I did my painting degree. I then applied for a postgraduate degree, which I did. Then my degree course was primarily painting and printmaking. I was using oil paint for that 4 years. I was doing a lot of pastels and charcoal work and things like that as well, but it was primarily painting with oils. I then, in my postgraduate year, decided to try acrylics. So it took me a whole year to kind of get to grips with acrylics, because they're not just like oil paint. And I had to, find lots of different ways of working with it, which were different. Once I left art school, I actually combined the two together. I would work in acrylics and then I would work in oils on top. So that you end up with the best of both worlds. But initially I was just working with acrylics for that year. I then left art school, and for a couple of years I worked with another artist, and we worked with architects and interior designers, and we were doing commissioned work for bars and build lots of buildings that wanted artwork, which, sometimes there were three-dimensional pieces as well, which was quite interesting. And I did that for a couple of years. Had a gallery as well for a little while, and then I got a job in a museum here for 5 years. I worked in the museum, and I used to put up their exhibitions, and I was doing remedial kind of work on their paintings and tidying up their frames. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about hanging exhibitions and how they should look and how you can make them look good. That was after 5 years. I then I wanted out of there because I'd hurt my back lifting heavy sculpture. So I thought, I can't do this forever. And I applied to do a postgraduate diploma in teaching. And I did that for a year, and I got a merit. And in that year, I applied to do a scholarship, and it was a painting scholarship, and which I won. And it was a traveling scholarship. And I went to China for 3 months, and I toured China. And during that time, the idea was that I was to do lots and lots of paintings, which I would then do when I come back to Scotland. But I only had a few weeks, so many of the paintings had to be done in China. So I took some watercolors, and I had done a little bit of just a test to try them out, and they were okay. I was doing all right with them. They weren't brilliant, but they were okay. And the reason I took watercolors was that they were light and they're easy to carry. And I basically had to backpack all around China. In the end, I did about 50 paintings, and I did lots of drawings, pen and ink drawings, and some big oil paintings when I got back. But it was while I was in China that I had a kind of issue with the watercolor, and it wasn't working. It was one of the paintings I had, and it wasn't working. And I got really frustrated, and I took some white gouache that I had, and I covered the painting, covered it up. It was a couple of streaks of bamboo that I had that I was painting, and it just wasn't working at all. And I just covered it up, obliterated it. And as it was drying, I started to see the painting appear again. It was starting to come through the white gouache. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't got rid of it. So I then started working with water and lifting things out and started working back into it. And it was at that point I realized that watercolor was so much more than I was thinking about it. The way I was using it before was very traditional, the way that I would expect everybody else to be using it. And it was through me trying to make something a little bit better, and actually by slightly destroying it, I actually found another route into the watercolor, and I actually found another method and a way of working. And I realized at that point that actually I could do an awful lot more with this medium than I had previously thought, because it was very limited about, you know, the way it should be done and all this sort of stuff. There was rules, you must follow the rules. And I realized I could break the rules. I could actually change things and I would modify it. So that's when I really started to explore. And for quite a while, this was in 1995, 96. For quite a while, I worked in acrylics and oils and did watercolor. And eventually I just found myself doing more and more watercolor. So it wasn't like I had decided that's what I was going to do. I just kind of fell into it, and I've just kept working with it. And occasionally I work with acrylics and watercolor. There's a technique that I have that I combine the two. But I do all sorts of things with watercolors now. I print with it, I collage with it, and like I say, I use acrylics, so I do a mixed media type thing. So kind of really explore the boundaries as to what you can do with watercolor, and it's usually born out of finding different ways to do things, so that I'm not always repeating what everyone else has done. I'm actually trying to find my own method and my own route through the work. And it was about that time that I then started working in college. I got a job in college, and I did that for 24 years, and I basically for the whole time I was teaching part-time. So I was painting part-time, teaching part-time, and I did that up until about a year or so ago when I stopped teaching in the college, and I've just been painting full-time, and I've been doing online courses and things like that. So that kind of takes us up to today.
That's such an interesting journey. When you started, probably I was in my very younger days in my school. You have so many various experiences, and that is helping you to decide where you want to go, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not even clear, like exactly what you have to do next. Like a lot of artists think, oh, this is exactly what I will do in the future. But the route is never clear, isn't it?
No, you know what, I leave things open to allow things to develop, and I do that. I don't fill up my year with lots and lots of workshops and exhibitions. I'll pencil in one or two, and then I allow myself the opportunity to, if things come up, then I'm available to do them. So I can do workshop at a short notice, or I can do, you know, maybe do a show or things like that. Because you'd be amazed how things fill up really fast. So I always feel like I kind of give myself enough space in which to move. The last thing you want to do is be sort of feel like you're hemmed in, you've got all these things to do, and there's all this other exciting stuff you'd like to do, but you can't because you're stuck. And teaching kind of did that. You know, when I was teaching, you were pretty much, these days I was teaching, these days I wasn't. And so I could only think in terms of a couple of days when I wasn't teaching. And so I had to wait until the end of the week before I could. So if I had an exciting idea, I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything about it. I maybe do some work at night, but I had to wait till the end of the week, and it felt so short. So I tried to give myself that kind of breathing space to allow things to develop and to be a little bit more organic, so that I'm not forcing the issue. Sometimes I think when you force things, it never comes out right.
Exactly. Exactly. I tried that. Tried to force many things on myself, but it didn't work. So this is my second question. What challenges you faced during your journey of becoming a professional artist, and how you overcame them?
Challenges as well when you're younger, when you're starting out, is people taking you seriously, especially when you're younger. They tend not to take you seriously because you have no experience. And that, even when you're older and you maybe decide that you're going to take up painting, you don't have anything behind you, so people won't take you seriously until you actually start to do things. So the main thing is to basically enter shows and to exhibit your work, and through that people will begin to trust you. Trust that if they give you a show, that you will turn up with 20 paintings. Trust that the work will be good quality, and that you'll put your best effort into it, and that you won't, try and kind of sort of run and cut and run and don't kind of follow through. So there's a kind of an element of trust in there, and that comes through time, and that comes through people seeing that you'll be there when they want you to be there, and that you will perform and produce the work at the quality that they're looking for. So exhibiting and working, that was the way through most of it, so that people could trust. I would do what I said I would do. I would actually produce the paintings.
Yeah, developing trust is really, really important in the market. When people see you when people see you that you are consistently doing the work and consistently taking the efforts, then they develop that kind of trust, and then they give you commission work or they purchase from you.
Yeah.
How you came out of all that problem of developing trust? Did you only exhibited your work in the galleries and that's how you came up as a professional, or is there anything else that helped you to overcome that problem that you were facing while coming up as a professional?
It was primarily, at the time, there was a very few private galleries, but there was big shows. So the big exhibitions, like the Royal Watercolour Society, or the Scottish version of that, the RSW. We also had the Royal Scottish Academy. There was big shows where you could put your work in, and if it was accepted, that was a bonus, and it was an honour. And then if you were really lucky, occasionally you might win a prize, and that type of thing pushes you, in front of everyone. So because everyone wants to know who won a prize that year. And so right through my career, winning prizes, I know it's not the only way for this to happen, but for me, if I won a prize, I would promote it, or I would try to kind of use that as a launching pad into doing something. So many years ago, I won a prize, a major prize. I came second, and it was the Sunday Times watercolor competition, which was in the Sunday Times magazine, or the Sunday Times newspaper, which is really big in England. And so they have a big exhibition, and it was a big prize. It was like £10,000 or something. So it was and this was quite a while ago. And I yearly, I would put something in, and sometimes I wouldn't get in. Sometimes I would get in, and that would be it. And then one year I came second, and I had Peter Blake. I don't know if you know who Peter Blake is, but Peter Blake was a pop artist who was sort of around. He actually, one of his works, collage piece, ended up being a Beatles album. Sgt. Pepper's was the Peter Blake, and so he was the same as Hockney, all these guys, and he chose my painting, and he did actually a video talking about my painting. So for me, that was a vindication that it must be quite good. So I used that as an opportunity to then apply to the Royal Watercolour Society in England. because I wanted to exhibit outside of Scotland. So this was my first chance to kind of, although I'd been showing down there with little shows like that, this was a chance to get into a society down there. And of course, once you get into the society, then you meet like-minded people who are at a different level. They're at a decent level. So I had already become a member of the RSW, which is the Scottish version, and I'm currently the president now of that. But in 1995, I became an RSW. And then at the end of the 90s, that's when I applied to RWS. And I did it on the back of winning that second prize. And you have to have 3 paintings, you had to have a sketchbook, and you had to have lots of sketches in a portfolio. So it's a big deal. There's a lot of work. And in amongst that, I put some of the images that I had of my painting, so that I was launching on the back of that, so that people would go, oh yeah, that's that guy who came second. And it was successful. I was then became a member of RWS. And so I've tried to do that at any time. If I win a prize, especially if it's a decent prize, then promote it and get your name out there and tell people about it, or use it to maybe approach a gallery that you've always wanted to show in, because they'll go, oh yeah, we saw your painting and we really like that. Then there's a vindication that actually the work's quite good and somebody's given you a prize for it. So yeah, you must be all right. And they may take a chance on you. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I did.
That's great to know how earlier days artists used to do it, like no social media. Like, it is very hard to imagine a life of artists without social media.
Yeah, no, you had to write letters and send slides.
Yes, letters, and there was no email, so you have to write letters. You have to literally do many things in order to promote yourself.
Yeah.
Angus, I'm finding it so inspirational to go through your journey. Like when you were aspiring to become a watercolor artist, how you found your unique voice, artistic voice, like how your paintings, when I see your paintings, I often see that light and shadow plays a very important role in your painting, and often use of specific blue color, a warm blue color in your painting. How you came out of your original, unique artistic style?
I think, when I was at art school, I always liked, so this was back in the 80s, and I always really liked realism. And it wasn't very fashionable, and everybody was trying to push you into doing other things. I kind of resisted a little bit, but I would try and accommodate them, because you still want good marks and you still want people to think that you're not inflexible, that you are able to do other things. So I ended up doing a bit of both. I ended up being kind of neither one thing or the other. I wasn't really realist, and I wasn't really abstract at the time, but it was big figurative works that were going on, especially in Scotland. It was big artists would do big figures and things like that. And I tried to find a niche in there and a voice that was my own. And I struggled with that for a long time. I mean, I really did struggle to find that. And I found the way it actually just came about almost accidentally, because I just kept working and kept painting. And I was being true to myself. So I decided, you know what, everybody keeps talking about how they want to loosen up, and that's the mantra. And I did a workshop a week or so ago, and I hear people still say the same thing. I'm trying to loosen up, as if somehow that will magically make everything better. I don't know. But I thought, no, I don't want to loosen up. I want to actually tighten up. I want to actually do the opposite. I want to make things sharper, tighter, cleaner, more vibrant, kind of almost hyper real. And I decided to go down there because it felt that's the way I wanted to go. It was the way I always liked painting. So I thought, why not just wholeheartedly go down that route? I know everybody else is not painting that way, but that's the way I'm going to go. So in Scotland, in particular in the RSW, there are very few people paint like me. Everybody is doing very loose, expressionistic, kind of colorful landscapes, and their drawings are very kind of expressive, and mine's is completely different. But then that makes you stand out, because you're not the same as everybody else. Everybody else is kind of following the trend, and I've just decided that I'll do what is right for me, what feels naturally right for me. And that was realism. And so my voice came through being stubborn, making sure that I worked my way through the subject matter, because even when I was younger, I didn't actually, the subject matter, I did all sorts of things. And I still do. Again, I keep that quite open. You know, although I do this type of thing, you know, which is what people come to expect, I'll do anything that I think is interesting. And anything that has interesting colors, any subject matter. Recently, I've been kind of looking at a subject which is called liminal spaces, which is actually just looking at thresholds. So looking at doors or windows or areas, places, and where it tends to be almost, there is no kind of humans involved. But there's always like a chair, or there's something that always suggests human activity or a human. So I'm coming at it in a slightly different way. And again, I've kind of slid into that, and I've just realized that that's actually what I'm doing. But I didn't, just through my choices, I've actually noticed that that's what I'm doing. And then it suddenly makes sense. So it's not, again, it wasn't well, I'm going to do liminal spaces, and this is, you know, I'm going to do everything that's like that. That's just not the way it's done. The way I did it was I was just working my way through lots of ideas, lots of things that I found interesting. And through that, my voice appeared.
Whenever I see your painting, I can immediately see, yeah, this is Angus Mac.
That's what you want. You want people to be able to recognize your work, regardless of what you paint, that they'll go, oh, that stands out as being this person. Then there will be a lot of other people who paint similar technique or similar style, maybe even similar subject matter, but they'll have a slightly different voice.
So Angus, like a lot of people, when they are just trying to become a watercolor artist, they assume watercolor to be very difficult, because a lot of people say that watercolor is very difficult. I'm not saying that watercolor is easy or difficult. It is just different. It is different than oil paints and acrylics. When you planned to become a watercolor artist, maybe various things came up in your mind, how I will earn money as a watercolor artist, or how I will do in the future, because you are a family person, right? So what are the things that helped you to stay firm in this role as a watercolor artist? And what are the sacrifices you gave while becoming a professional artist that helped you feel that, yes, I am going to stay here?
Again, it was very much about just doing what I felt was right, and so I fell into watercolor, and I continued because I enjoyed using it, and then I would get feedback from people who'd say, "That's really nice. I really like that," and so you feel, "Oh, that's something I would like to pursue a little bit more." As far as things like sacrificing, I mean, the main thing that you sacrifice is time. I think that's the main thing. You have to spend so long doing it, and especially when you have young children. My wife was able to during the summer when I wasn't at college teaching. I'd say, okay, during the summer, this is when I get a chance to paint, and so she would take the boys out during the day while she allowed me space and time, and so. In some ways, I lost out because I wasn't with them all the time, although I was here quite a lot. So they still had a lot of interaction with me. They could come and speak to me at any time. So it wasn't as if I sort of locked the door and nobody was allowed to come in. It was, but I had to be in here in the studio. And I'm in here till 10 o'clock every night. And I work, maybe from 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning till 10 at night. Obviously, in between all that, there are things that you do that are not focused on art. But I try to set aside that time. So time's the biggest sacrifice in terms of family life and things like that, because you can't do everything. And you can't, especially when you have an exhibition or a show coming up, you need to spend time on the work. It's just the one thing. And because I work really quite slowly, I think that's the issue. I know a lot of artists can do something in 40 minutes and it's a finished painting. I take a long time on my work. Some paintings take months and months. Some paintings, I've got lying around here. I work on about 10, 11 paintings at the same time. You're seeing, well, right now in view, you're seeing about 4. There's another one down there. And I've got another 6 or 7 littered around, and I just hop into a painting when I feel like I'm starting to get a bit bored on something, and then just work on something else, and then I'll move around. So I lose track on what I'm doing at any given time, which is probably a good thing because the paintings take so long. I think I would start to resent the fact I've spent 3 months on a painting, and so I'm not aware of it because I'm jumping around. I'll work on this and then I'll work on that one, and then spend a couple of weeks on it, and I'll work on something else, and eventually they all do get finished. But yeah, it just takes a while, and some paintings they're lying around here for years, 2 or 3 years before I finish it. But I do finish it eventually. I don't know if that answers your question. I've kind of lost it.
I'm also into realism, and I can totally understand that it takes so much of time.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who are not so positive about realism, and they say that why you have to actually paint this exactly like a photograph when you can simply hang the photograph on the wall. So they don't understand the meaning of realistic painting or hyper-realistic painting. And I'm okay with that. Like earlier, I used to get a little bit offended, but now I'm totally okay with that. Okay, they don't understand the value of it. Just going to a Mount Everest with a helicopter is very different than climbing the Mount Everest by yourself.
I say to all my students that what you're doing is that you're not copying the photograph, you're interpreting the photograph. So if I use a photograph as a starting point for a painting, most people say to me, oh, actually, you made the painting better than the photograph, because some of the photographs that I have are maybe not particularly great. And what I'll do is I'll actually print it off at 3 different grades. I'll have a really light version, a middle version, and a dark version, where the dark version has most of the shadows and hardly any of the kind of middle tones and things in there. And I have that as a guide to decide which way I want to go. So I'm not interpreting just a photograph and copying it. I'm actually looking at all the different images and deciding which version I'm going to slide it towards, and it might be on a compromise of a couple of versions. And so it's an interpretation. So I might leave things out. I might enhance colors. I might change bits. I might take stuff out that in a composition that doesn't work. So I'm not tied to it, and that's quite liberating, because you then are not feeling, oh, this is not good because I can't paint this exactly like the photograph. Actually, sometimes it's better to do something else if you're maybe, for instance, if there's a bit that you're not coping with, you can't paint it, that you find another solution that isn't just copying the photograph. So the photograph is a starting point for me. It's not my goal to have a finished hand-painted photograph. It's actually to have a thing that's actually better than the original image. And nobody sees the original image, so nobody's going to be able to say, oh, well, you didn't do that, and why did you leave that out, and why did you not do this? In the end, it's the final image that counts. That's all that counts.
Yeah, the final painting looks like a photograph, so they think that this is exactly how the photograph must be looking, but that is not true. Can you describe a little bit about the tools and the techniques that you find most effective, and the approach that you take while creating your painting?
Well, it starts off with a kind of accurate drawing, and I usually square up. If I use a photograph, I'll square it up and I'll transfer the elements. I find tracing sometimes is, and I will use it if I'm wanting to trace lettering, or if I want, maybe I'm doing an old master or something like that, and I want to keep it very true. I don't want it to be, I don't want it to be different from the original. So I would trace that. But usually I don't want to trace photograph, because I feel like I'm tied down. I feel like once all these little bits are in there, I'm obliged to fill them all in and be true to them. And if you go outside the line, it's not going to work. So when I square it up, it allows me just to get the essence of the image. It'll still be in the right place. Shadows and shapes and things will be in the right place, but I won't add all this stuff in here. I don't kind of trace around all that. That's blank. I might have 1 or 2 bits that just give me keys, and then everything else is actually done in the painting. So that the texture is actually created as I go along. It's not created by me just copying, filling it in, sort of thing. So when I do the drawing, the first thing I do is I have a mix of black, which is a Van Dyke brown and a Prussian blue, and I will put the blacks in, and I paint the blacks in first to create a key, so that you don't lose the essence of the image, because sometimes when you put a big wash in, you lose your drawing, you can't see parts of it. And I think you've spent ages drawing it up and then you lose it. So I make sure that I get the essence of the darks in place, and then I start working. And I don't work mostly in the palette. It's mostly on the paper. So a lot of the mixing's done on the paper as opposed to the palette. So I'll do it in layers. I'll put a warm color down, then I'll put a sort of cool color down. And I quite often will do that to balance the colors out, so that that's how I make my grays most of the time, is working with opposites in the color wheel. So you work with blues and then oranges, and that'll cancel each other out and makes an interesting gray. And I work with a pretty huge palette as well. Like, as when I say huge, I mean a big range of colors. I know there's some people that say 5 colors, and I do everything in 5 colors. Because I'm layering it in pure colors, I quite like seeing new colors, and I get quite excited to see a brand new color I've not tried before, because I wonder what I can do with it. So I have a lot of different colors in my palettes.
Can I see your palette, like the palette that you're using?
Well, I've got one here. The other ones that was getting used this morning. This is my blue. So I work them up as an orange or a warm palette and a cool palette. So this is the cool palette. And as you can see, I try to keep it in zones, like the blues and the purples and the greens and sort of dirty greens. But I have a warm palette. So I wasn't expecting to show this. This is my warm palette. And so then you have the kind of umbers and the siennas, and this is my black, my Van Dyks and my oranges. And I just keep them in, and I don't, as you can see, I don't clean them. I just, I'm Scottish, so, waste not, want not. I just spray it with water and I'm ready to go. Brushes, I have expensive brushes, but I use a lot of very cheap brushes that maybe, sort of students use, like very simple brushes. I do have expensive ones. But some of my best brushes are actually really old worn brushes. I'm looking for an example. Sort of brushes like this, which I end up actually splaying them so much that they end up becoming my brush for dragging. That becomes my brush for splattering. So I'll splatter like that. I'll use that for stippling, dry brushing. And so this type of brush becomes my mainstay. I do a lot of work with square brushes like that. And I also have little brushes like this, which was my little detail brushes that I had made. And I get them made in Russia, which has been difficult to get them recently. But they're perfect because they're so small, and they're really good. What I don't like is having a big bit of the brush out here. It becomes unwieldy for me. So I quite like just a nice small brush in my hand, and it allows me to kind of do sort of fiddly marks. So I do have good brushes, but most of the time I'll end up just using the cheaper brushes, or brushes that I've used for years that are really worn, and they're I mean, you can see they're a mess. They don't look very good. They've all stuck together with tape, and they're my best brushes. So yeah, I'm. There's some people that will only use a particular brand or whatever. I will just I've got loads. If you can see at the side here, I've got a bunch of brushes. This is just one jar, and I have about 10 of them. And they're all brand new brushes there. So it's not that I don't have any brushes to use. I do have a lot of brushes that are brand new sitting there, because I buy brushes when I go out. If I go abroad, I'll buy lots of brushes, and I just put them in there when I need a brush. I've got brushes that I can just pick up. I don't need to kind of suddenly think, oh no, I need a small brush to work with. I already have a pile of them, but I won't use them until I need them.
Okay, it is so interesting to see learn about your process, the palette that you use, and the brushes that you use, the ones which you like the most. It is so interesting. Angus, there are a lot of artists who are very scared of watercolors. They are having self-doubt, fear of failure. They want to learn watercolors. They want to explore this medium. They want to create beautiful paintings. But the fear, the self-doubt, the fear that they will ruin the painting, or the fear that people will judge them or not like their painting, that holds them back. What do you have to say for those kind of people?
You know, I was talking about this the other day in a workshop about how that holds you back, that stops you from progressing, because the thing that you hear the most about when people are painting is that I don't want to do any more in case I ruin it. And actually, you have to get into a point where I actually find I get quite excited when I'm doing a painting and it's not working. I know that I'm about to do something that's going to slightly ruin it. And I get excited about that because I know that means that something interesting is going to happen. So I might be working a painting and it's not progressing the way I want it to do. And there are a few things I might do, but one of them is actually to actually soak it and then peel a layer back so that it just removes a layer or two so I can then go back into it. Or I might actually throw a lot of paint at it. So I'll spray it and throw paint at it and splatter it and just start doing things to it to mess it up, so that I have to then work my way through the problems that I've created, and that allows me to make it better. So what I'm saying is, watercolor, a lot of people think it's really difficult. It is an awkward sort of, an awkward type of painting to do, but if you throw yourself into it and don't have any fear and don't worry about making a mistake, then that frees you up. And it allows you to try things and explore, and it allows you to paint without any fear, which is really important. If you have that fear within you, it stops you from trying things. It stops you from, you think, oh, I better not do that just in case, I make a mess of it and I've spent 16 hours on it already. I don't want to go any further. It'll never become extraordinary. It'll become quite good, but it'll never be special. Because I've had people come up to me in an exhibition and they're painters, and they'll say to me, I can understand maybe 50, 60% of what you've done, but there are things in there, I don't know how you've done them. And it's because I've had to do multiple things to the painting. It's not just a wash, another wash, and then some highlights and finished. And when you look at that, you can understand it immediately. You know how it's been done. People look at my painting and they're not sure how it's been put together. And quite often I actually forget myself, because it's just part of the painting. I just do it intuitively and just work my way through it. It's not like a recipe. I just kind of work my way through the painting and try things and explore and not worry about making a mess. Because I know that if I put the wrong color and I go too dark, spray it, paper towel, lift, I can start again. If I put the wrong color down, I can do the same sort of thing. Or I can apply, if I've made it too blue and it's too cool, then I can warm it up, just put a wash across the top of it that's a bit warmer. So there's, over the years, by making lots and lots of mistakes, you learn how to correct them. And so I quite often will just say, okay, today I'm going to paint the whole thing black, and then I'm going to start from there and start working that way. Or today I'm not going to draw, I'm going to actually just paint. And so I used to find myself that I would force myself into situations that I had to try and get myself out of, just because I enjoyed the challenge. Watercolor is not, it's difficult, but it's not impossible, and people seem to think it's not very forgiving, but it can be really forgiving. You can do all sorts of things with it, and that was what twigged in my head when I was in China and I put the white paint on the paper and started using clean water to lift things out. Was that actually it's quite forgiving. I can do an awful lot with this. I actually can draw back into it. I can use wax crayons. I can do anything I want. I can paint. It's really quite versatile. That's why I think I like it more than like oil paint or acrylics, in that it allows me to any point to actually get stuck into it with some paint if I want to, or with a pencil, or with a crayon, or with pastels. I don't have to stay with watercolor. That's the other thing, is there's no rule to say that you've started in watercolor, therefore you must finish in watercolor.
Exactly.
If you need a little bit of pastel, just a little bit of drawing or something like that, just to finish it off, then do it. There's only, you'll not be able to put it into the Transparent Watercolor Society, but you'll be able to put it in plenty of other places.
Yeah,
So,
for exhibition's sake, if they have some specific rule that you have to have 92% or 98% pure watercolors, then it is a different story. Otherwise, you are the boss, like the artist is the boss.
So so be free. Just again, go with your gut feeling and explore and experiment and make mistakes and have failures, and then out of all of that, you will start to have more and more successes, because you'll know how to deal with the failures. You'll know how to get yourself out of the problems. If you live in fear and you stop yourself early, you can never go past that, because you're always going up to that point and going, oh, I better stop now. If what you really need to be able to do is push through that, make mistakes, make it a failure, figure out how to make it better. And from that, you'll learn how to do something that looks really quite good, beyond something that looks okay.
I give this example to students when they talk about the fear. I say that, the same ghost movie cannot scare you twice. If you watch the same story, ghost story, like movie, several times, you will not feel scared, right? Exactly like that. If you make the same mistake again and again and learn how to come out of it, you will no longer be scared. So why don't you just make a lot of mistakes and find out how to get out of it, instead of stopping yourself from feeling scared or feeling like self-doubt? You just make that mistake and learn how to come out of it. That is the easiest way of getting out of the fear.
Yeah, embrace it. Don't worry about it. Just think, okay, I've made a mistake. Something interesting is about to happen, because I'm about to do something I didn't expect. That's the way I look at it. That's why I get quite excited when I actually get to a point where sometimes it's not working, because I kind of know that I'm about to do something interesting. And if it doesn't work, you know what? There's always a bin. You can always just scrunch it up, put it in the bin and try another one. But yeah, it has to be catastrophic before I do that.
So Angus, there are a lot of artists who want to create amazing paintings, but sometimes something stops them from learning from another artist. Sometimes it happens that they stop from investing in learning through a workshop or joining an online course. There are thousands of good quality, high quality online courses are there, books are there. From your experience, what have you found, like how learning from another artist can help, like learning from you, learning from me, learning from any other good artist, how it can help them and how it can boost their courage, their skill to another level? What you would like to say on that?
You know what, and I've done it myself, I've gone in workshops as well, when I've gone into doing a workshop in an area that I'm unsure of, or even if I've just gone to do something like life drawing for a few days, just to do something different. You become a student, and you shouldn't fight with the lecturer. You should kind of push against it. You should try and kind of explore their ideas and their thoughts, because they're going to put you in a situation where you feel uncomfortable, because that's not the way you would normally do it. And they'll give you things to do that you wouldn't normally do, and things that you wouldn't normally expect to do. And they'll give you solutions that you didn't think about and you didn't expect. And it's that opens your eye up to doing different things. And so it's really useful, I think, to put yourself in a situation of being a student for a while, so that you're learning something new, something different. If you're ready for that and you're ready to kind of take that on board, I would suggest going on a workshop of somebody that you like. They may do something that you think's something you would like to learn. And I think it's worthwhile doing, because you will learn a new way of approaching it. You'll learn maybe different ways of mixing color, a different way to approach a painting. I did a workshop in Holland 2 or 3 days ago, and the students were saying, so you're telling us to do the opposite of what we were always told to do. And so what I've done is I've flipped everything that they thought watercolor was about, was just changed and flipped. And so that made them think. And some of them, because I was getting them to do some challenging things, some of them felt slightly uncomfortable about it, as they sometimes do. But that's because you're no longer in your comfort zone. You're no longer doing what you feel comfortable doing. But that's a good thing, because that means you're going to be learning something different that you can then bring back into your own practice. Because that's really what they should be doing, is going on a workshop, learning to do something different, and then taking the ideas and taking it into your own practice, not copying what the person's done, but actually taking on board some of the ideas and applying it maybe to what you do, so that your own voice is enhanced slightly by introducing new ideas and new thoughts and new ways of approaching things. So, you know, I do think that going on these workshops is there to kind of open your eyes and to new ways of thinking and new ways of approaching things.
I totally agree with you, Angus. Like whenever I join a workshop, whether it is related to business skills or whether it is related to art skills, I always see that person's point of view and try to see how I can incorporate their point of view in what I'm doing and how I can enhance my own style. Maybe just take 10% of the other person's style, learn whatever they are doing in the workshop, but just incorporate 10% and your work will be enhanced. It is so valuable. Like workshops are like workshops, online courses. These are like saving 10 years, 20 years of your life. What you can learn only by doing in your own way, that may not enhance your work so much. But if you just learn through a workshop, it can drastically improve your work. I feel like.
I mean, when I was in art school, I spent most of my time in the library, because anytime I came across a problem, I went to the library to look at other artists' work. That's to see if I could get inspiration from how they did things. So it wasn't coming from my tutor, because the tutors weren't coming in very often. So I would just go to the library and I would have access to all these books, and I'd spend my time looking at other artists' work and then taking on board maybe the way they've composition or the color that they've used or something, think, yeah, that might help in my painting, and then go back. So that I was, even from day one, I was looking at other artists and trying to learn from, you know, and they could be doing things that were totally different to what I was doing. You know, they could be an abstract painter, but I really like the colors they used and the way they've balanced out that whole canvas, and think, I could use that shape, but I'll put, you know, a door in there and I'll do this and I'll do that, and it becomes a different painting. But I've drawn inspiration from another painter who was doing an abstract expressionist. So it's really important that you are able to kind of look at other artists, not to copy, but to kind of draw inspiration from.
Exactly. It is so important to keep learning, keep growing, and keep pushing your own skills. And also by joining other people's online courses, workshops, you are becoming more coachable. You are becoming more open to learning and growing. That is so important. So we are coming towards the end of our interview. I want to declare, like, to the people that there is a book coming up where I'm writing this book with Angus McEwan, Stephen Kozar, Mikhail Stashchenko, David Stickle, and myself. So that book will be launched sometime this year. I don't know exactly when. So it is there. And if you are interested to learn how exactly he paints, like every single step, so that book covers all of that, the style, how Angus McEwan develops his painting from absolute scratch to absolute finish. So that will be there. What message or words of encouragement would you like to share with aspiring watercolor artists who are determined to fulfill their dreams as becoming a professional artist or just an artist?
Well, I think I'd said one of them already, which was, you know, be true to yourself. So that, you know, that you have your own voice eventually, but don't give up. That's the main thing. You know, a lot of people I went to art school don't paint anymore. They've drifted into other things. They're just given up. And I think if you kind of keep persisting and keep working away at it, you'll get better, and you'll get better known, and you will find a stronger voice, and everything gets easier the longer you do this. You know, it's difficult at the start, but if you continue to kind of work away and continue to develop and continue to, take classes and kind of go and look at other people's artwork and try different things, eventually you'll find a route through all of this that feels natural to you. And something, will start to kind of click, it will start to come together. And then it will become easier. And, you'll start winning prizes and you'll start winning sort of competitions, and people then will start to want to see your work and look for it and to buy it, which is the main thing as well. So yeah, be true to yourself and don't give up.
This is such a $1 million message. Be true to yourself and don't give up. Like, there is nothing to give up. Like, this is only one life we are living. And if we give on ourselves, then what else we can have, right? So wonderful interview, Angus. I learned a lot. I found your journey so inspirational. You kept pushing yourself. You kept developing your skills and refining your skills by joining workshops, refining by doing experiments. And even you faced a lot of people who said that, you have to go this way, but you felt that you have to go that way, and you actually did. And finally, you got so much success. That is so inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing, Angus.
Thank you for inviting me, and I've enjoyed the chat. It's been it's actually educational for myself as well. Things I had forgotten about that you don't think about. So yeah, thank you.
I hope you found this his journey very inspiring, motivating, and his message, his $1 million message, that be true to yourself and never give up on yourself and your artistic skills. That is so good. So I hope you found this very inspiring, and I hope you will keep pushing up yourself, and I hope you will continue with the journey of watercolors. Thank you so much for joining us in this interview. And I will bring more interviews in the future with great artists, world-class artists, and hope I will keep up inspiring you. Thank you so much, Angus, once again.